Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Levy, joined by Barry Melrose. Welcome to Inside the NHL. Did you get a load of that Ducks-Blackhawks game? Was that unbelievable?
It was awesome. It was everything we hoped it would be. I just hope those two teams play in the Western Finals. Be unbelievable.
You know, I believe the Ducks of Anaheim are going to acquire Corey Perry at some time. I mean, they're going to get him back. This is the longest suspension in history. It's only 4 games. Doesn't it seem like it was forever?
I think they have to change the name back to the Mighty Ducks, too, because they're that mighty now.
I heard you said that on the air. You might have gotten caught. You know, they changed that a long time ago.
7 years, only 7 years.
So they don't have to trade him. He's already on the team, and he will return from this 4-game suspension coming up for Anaheim, so the Ducks will get even better. Let's join by now Pierre LeBrun, our friend from ESPN.com. And speaking of trades, the real deadline is approaching. It'll be April the 3rd, so a lot of people didn't think the Ducks could sign both Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry, and in fact they have. What does that mean for the deadline, Pierre?
Well, it means that the biggest name that might have been available is no longer, so you have to sort of look at the next echelon. You know, I think Jerome McGinley is probably the biggest name remaining, maybe because more of what he's done in the past and what he might be able to do for you now, but nevertheless, he'd be an excellent pickup at the deadline for a contender, a team that doesn't need him to be everything like Calgary has, but rather just a complimentary player. And certainly the Boston Bruins have been tracking McGinley, the Pittsburgh Penguins. The LA Kings have interest. Daryl Sutter, of course, would love to be reunited with Jerome McGinley. Detroit is another team that I'm told has interest in McGinley. But it's going to come down to him, guys. He's got a no-trade clause, but more importantly than that, he has a strong relationship with ownership there in Calgary. He's been the face of the franchise. He decides where he goes, if he goes. And, you know, that decision coming here over the next couple of weeks. And you know, I also think tied into it is what he wants to do past this season. I'm not sure he wants to bounce around as a rental player now and then sign with another team again in the summer. So a lot to think of here for Jerome McGinley, but he'd be the biggest name left for sure.
You know, Pierre makes a good point on the sentimental aspect of Jerome McGinley and the Calgary Flames and what he's meant to that team. If you're Calgary, Barry, you're not going to win with him. So why not get something in return? And McGinley, what a boost to a club who's already a contender right now.
But it's got to be handled right. It's got to be look like it's good for both of them. That's what's happening in Calgary, because Calgary can't afford the bad will of looking like they're shipping Jerome McGinley out because he is an old player and they can't use him anymore. And Jerome doesn't want to be made the bad guy by demanding that Calgary trades him. So it's how they get it done. I think Jerome would like to get traded. I think he'd like to have one more kick at the can. You know, he's getting older in his career. He doesn't have that many more opportunities. And I think he's only going to go to a team that has a chance of winning the Stanley Cup. He's not going to go to a bad team, a rebuilding team like a Colorado or somebody like that. So, but it's how they're going to make it. And the name Pierre did mention is Mike Ribeiro from Washington. Here's a guy, his contract's done at the end of this year. He's having an unbelievable year with Washington. If they look like they're not going to make the playoffs, you got to think there's going to be a good value for Ribeiro out there the way he's playing. So he's a guy that could garnish a lot of interest at the deadline too. Pierre,
back to this story though on Jerome McGinley, just to look for something similar. Is this the Raymond Bourque scenario? Is that the closest that you can come to equate to the same situation? Guy who is the face of the franchise, beloved in a town, goes someplace else to go win the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. In fact, it's interesting. It's even been suggested to me, Steve, that maybe he can go win a cup somewhere and then come back and finish his career in Calgary. That would be unbelievable if that happened, but I don't know. I think that's a lot. I think once you divorce yourself, you divorce yourself. You know, the other guy, interestingly, guys, that we thought could have been in the Ray Bourque position was Daniel Alfredsson. You know, because once they lost Carlson and Spezza, you just assumed that Ottawa would go down the standings and not make the playoffs. And Craig Anderson, for that matter, also injured. Geez, Paul McLean, Coach of the Year, anyone? Unbelievable the way they've hung in there. 5th in the East as we tape this. And because of that, I don't think Alfredsson's going to be available. And that's a guy that the Boston Bruins had actually penciled in as #1 on their list, let me tell you. Barry, they would love to have Alfie.
Sorry, Pierre, to cut you off there. Barry, from the coaching perspective, whether it's an Alfredsson or a Ginla, you bring them into a team that's really already set like the Bruins, who could win the Cup without either of those guys. You concerned about any chemistry issues there on the ice, off the ice?
Not with Jerome. Boston, I think, is the perfect team for him to go to because he plays
Boston. Now you're talking about.
Because he plays Boston Bruin style, north and south, not fancy. He attacks the net, cycles the puck. He's not trying to beat guys one-on-one. He's not a dangler. He's a straight-ahead bull of a player, and that's how Boston plays. Like Lucic and those guys, they don't change lanes. They don't bring the puck back. They're always ahead, finish their check. So Jerome would be a perfect fit for them. A team like Chicago, Pittsburgh, much more flow slow, much more European style. I don't know if Jerome really fits into that style, but boy, would he ever fit into the Boston Bruins. He'd be a perfect fit for them.
The Ottawa story is unbelievable. And Pierre, it's somewhat lost in the States, as you would expect. The Senators, they don't get a whole lot of attention here. However, a team that does get a whole lot of attention is the Pittsburgh Penguins. They are flying with Malkin out, with Letang out, and Sidney Crosby doing it really in all three zones. Made the most consistent hockey he's played in his career, doing everything. How about this run by the Penguins now, 10 in a row?
It's sensational, and you know, as you said, getting Malkin in and out of the lineup. So, you know, one year they've done it without Crosby, now without Malkin. It just shows you that this team is deeper than their superstars. You know, Chris Letang being out is going to be intriguing how it impacts this team. But, you know, again, with the trade deadline, Pittsburgh is in the rental market because of their cap situation, because they want to sign up getting Malkin and Chris Letang to long-term deals next summer or this summer coming up. I don't think they want to acquire a player that's going to jam up their cap going into next season. So you're really looking at Ray Shero trying to find someone on the rental market, a guy whose contract is expiring, which is why, like Boston, Pittsburgh's also interested in a guy in Iginla. But there are other guys out there who are UFAs. Brendan Morrow is an intriguing name, another captain, another guy who you have to handle delicately in Dallas if you move him because of what he's meant to that franchise, much like Iginla. Morrow has slowed down, but still a playoff warrior type guy that I know that, in fact, the Boston Bruins, by the way, keep talking about the Bruins. They've been tracking Morrow as well.
And this is a situation where, you know, you have to handle some players delicately. This is not unique to the NHL. We're seeing in the NFL right now, Brian Urlacher, Chicago Bears. You see guys get older, can still play, whether they can win or not. Yeah.
I hope both those teams, whoever moves Iginla or Alfredson or any of those guys, handle it better than the Chicago Bears have handled it.
That hasn't gone.
That hasn't gone so well. That's what they got to be careful of.
Right.
What's happened to Urlacher not happening in hockey, because that's the ultimate disaster where the player says they basically told me to take it or leave it. I played here 13 years. I gave my heart and soul, and they did this to me. So that's what the Calgary Flames are trying to make sure doesn't happen.
The PR spin is so important. Pierre, who's the best team in hockey right now? Is it Pittsburgh on the roll? Again, we love that Anaheim-Chicago matchup. Who's the best team in your opinion right this second?
You know, the last 5 years I've covered the playoffs in the West, so I'm biased. I got to go with Chicago. I know they lost to Anaheim this week, but I still like Chicago the most. The Ducks are an amazing story, and to me have proven beyond belief that they are for real, but I'll take the Blackhawks. I know the Penguins have been tremendous, but the one concern I still have for Pittsburgh, and it shows up seemingly whenever they play Philly, is how they play defensively at times. And Marc-Andre Fleury still makes me a bit nervous after that first round effort last year.
Barry, you got to weigh in on the best. Some people think the Kings, who have not been spoken of, like Chicago and Anaheim, the Kings might still be the best team in hockey.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go sort of outside the box, what I've usually been saying. I'm going to say the Ducks. I think the Ducks' goaltending is better than Chicago's goaltending. I think Fost and Hiller. I still don't believe in the Blackhawks' goaltending. Fleury, I agree, has been hit or miss come playoff time. Look how he played last year against Philadelphia in the playoffs. He didn't play well at all. The Ducks got two good goaltenders. I like their defense. They got some great young scooters back there. They're bigger than Chicago. And the forwards, and we saw it last night's game, the forwards match up well against Chicago, and Chicago's defense had trouble handling those big forwards, and Perry wasn't in the lineup. So right now I think the Ducks are the best team. I like Pittsburgh a lot. Here's an interesting thing. How come Pittsburgh couldn't move Malkin?
You mean trade him?
Wouldn't that be something? You could trade Malkin, but the thing is with Crosby, you're worried about the concussions. But what could you get for Malkin right now? They play better without Malkin in the lineup. Crosby plays better. The team seems to be better defensively without Malkin in the lineup. You could get two great players for Malkin, move him to a team that needs a star power person to sell tickets, and you'd be a better player for it. You'd be a better team for it.
Pierre, look what Melrose just did. Now you got to chase down Malkin trade rumors.
Barry, Kenny Malkin's not going anywhere, but I love how you think outside the box.
I am an outside-the-box guy, Pierre. There's no doubt about that.
But, you know, Barry says it, and that's how this stuff starts. And poor Pierre's got to chase down the rumors. Divisional play is interesting. To me, it's almost more interesting in some of the bad divisions because they're only going to get one team into the playoffs, and that makes that division race very interesting, whichever division that happens to be. Pierre, which division are you focusing on?
I'm really focused on Northwest. I think that what the Minnesota Wild have done over the last month is amazing. You know, they had a brutal start. People were questioning, you know, is this going to work? The Parise Suter signings, they had no chemistry. Well, of course, they needed time to adjust with all these new parts. And now you're seeing the team that they can be. I know the coach, Barry Melrose, picked them to go to the Cup Finals, but I'm speaking with Chuck Fletcher this week. He just feels that finally chemistry has set in on that team, and I think the Wild are going to upset the Vancouver Canucks and win that Northwest Division.
Well, that'd be a pretty good upset. Vancouver, the perennial favorite and winner in that division. Barry, what division are you focusing on right now?
Northeast, Boston, Montreal. What a battle. These two teams, original six, they hate each other. They played against each other in playoffs for so many years. It looks like it's going to come down to one of those two teams. Boston's got some injuries right now, so they've fallen behind a little bit, but they're going to get those guys back, and they're going to be a player at the deadline. The team we see with Boston now, in all likelihood, is not going to be the team we see start the playoffs for the Boston Bruins. I got to think they're going to get somebody, and somebody good, to help that Boston team. I love the way they play. I like Tuukka Rask net. Certainly forgot about Timmy Thomas. You got Chara. The Krejci line's awesome. The Bergeron line's awesome. And the third and fourth lines of Boston not only play good defense, they chip in goals here or there. So I think that's going to be a great battle between Boston and Montreal.
Funny you mentioned Tim Thomas. The Kings will get their trip to Washington, D.C. to meet the president, and you know that'll bring up a whole lot of Tim Thomas sentences, probably. Probably some of them jokes as well. I know Boston and Montreal is on the horizon. You talk about that great matchup that'll meet next week. But Pierre, focusing on the weekend, is there a particular game that you're most interested in?
Game plural. It's the same matchup. It's Detroit at Anaheim. Deux fois. That's French for
Seven?
twice.
Oh.
Barry knows that. He's from Saskatchewan. Wait a minute. There's no
I know what you said.
Yeah. You know, the quirky 48-game schedule, you see a lot of weird things. Detroit's at Anaheim twice, Friday and Sunday. And I think, frankly, we all know how amazing the Ducks have been this year. Nice test here for Detroit, who are confusing at times. They look like they're finally back to the Detroit team that we know, and then they lose a couple. So I think this is a real important test for the Red Wings in Anaheim.
Red Wings seem to have their hands full with Columbus. They seem to play.
Everybody's got their hands full with Columbus.
Look out for the Blue Jackets all of a sudden. Barry, which game are you focused on for the weekend?
Well, I'm going to go with Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Two teams that really bring out the worst in each other at times. And this could be the game. If Pittsburgh can get by Philadelphia, they have a chance of making this streak go a long ways. But Philly plays against Pittsburgh better than they play against anybody else. They change. And Pittsburgh, for some reason, they let the Philadelphia Flyers get under their skin. They talk about it. They say they're going to be disciplined. And all of a sudden, Drew does something or somebody does something out there. Max Talbot does something. And all the discipline's gone out the window. And they end up either winning 7-6 or losing 7-6. So that's going to be a game I'm really going to watch. Number one, it's an important game for Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. But number two, it's really entertaining, these two teams.
Always fun to watch. And that'll be the big disappointment if Philadelphia doesn't make the playoffs. Because we're unable to have a Pittsburgh-Philadelphia.
Well, they better beat Pittsburgh if they want to make the playoffs.
That's like they're
and every other game they're playing.
And Pierre, we'll ask you on this note. I mean, I'm sure you've done the math. Do you see any way the Flyers make the postseason now?
Yeah, it's not impossible because you look at the bottom bracket of the East, and there's still some real susceptible teams there. I mean, Winnipeg's a tremendous story. In fact, they're number 3 seed as we tape this because they're winning the South Least division right now. But Carolina has injuries. Winnipeg, you never know. The Rangers, geez, never know what to expect with that team. So it's still a possibility, if for no other reason, that I think there's a lot of question marks among some of the teams that are in a playoff spot right now.
Pierre, with that, we'll let you go. Thanks for stopping by.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Au revoir, Pierre. That's French for goodbye.
Parfait.
Fluent in 7 or 8 languages, Barry Melrose is.
Just not English.
Or French, for that matter. Let's get to our 3 goals of the week. You know Patty Kane's going to be there. But we're going to start at number 3, the Canucks and the Blues. Watch Jordan Schroeder, and he's going to find Dale Weiss for the goal.
That's sort of like a Patrick Kane goal. Spin-a-rama pass onto the tape. Weiss comes in, throws a nice little fake, goes to his backhand upstairs. Big goal. And that's against St. Louis, too. That's a good defensive team. That's not chopped liver back there playing defense. That's Pietrangelo. So great pass, great finish on the goal by Weiss.
Coming in at number 2, the Rangers and the Hurricanes. Shootout goal, Rick Nash. Dan Ellis did not have his best shootout here.
No, he didn't. I think he got scored on every one. But right there, you just see Nash's reach. The guy's 6'4". He's got Condor-like reach. As soon as he had the goaltender going the one way, Nash knew he had the reach to go back and put it backhand into the net. They need more goals 5-on-5 during the game from Rick Nash.
And number 1 from Saturday, Blackhawks and Stars. Got to be Patty Kane.
I said he's the most entertaining player in the NHL. I'd pay money to see this guy play. Whether it's a pass, backhand, blind pass, or a goal like this, spin around the backhand, no one does it better than 88 for the Chicago Blackhawks, Patrick Kane.
Brings up a great discussion, probably for another time, but while I have you here, how about the MVP? How about the MVP even of Chicago? I mean, it's very, right?
Yep.
Taves and Kane separately have both been spectacular seasons.
Depends what you stress, defense and leadership or goal scoring and points.
Right.
You could easily give it to both. I would say Taves. I think Taves scores bigger goals, more important goals than Patrick Kane.
Taves reminds me so much of Yzerman.
Yep.
Even facially,
yep.
expression,
Very
uniform
similar.
number,
Very
captain.
similar. Yep.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks for letting me sit in.
My pleasure.
For Barry Melrose and Pierre LeBrun, I'm Steve Levy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Inside the NHL.
Bon job, Steve. Bon job. That means good job in French.
Thank you.